The Allied oil campaign of World War II 5-11 pitted the RAF and the USAAF against facilities supplying Nazi Germany with petroleum, oil, and lubrication (POL) products. It formed part of the immense Allied strategic bombing effort during the war. The targets in Germany and in Axis-controlled Europe 6 included refineries, synthetic fuel factories, storage depots, and other POL infrastructure. Before the war, Britain had identified Germany's reliance on oil and oil products for its war machine, and the strategic bombing started with RAF attacks on Germany in 1940. After the U.S. entered the war, December 1941, it carried out daytime precision bombing attacks, such as Operation Tidal Wave against refineries in Romania in 1943. 7. The last major strategic raid of the European theater of the war targeted a refinery in Norway in April 1945. During the war, the effort expended against POL targets varied, with relative priority sometimes given to other objectives, such as to defeating the German V-weapon attacks or to preparations for the invasion of Western Europe in 1944. The strategic importance of oil resources in World War II also showed in campaigns such as the Anglo-Soviet invasion of Iran, August to September 1941, to secure access to Persian oil. Japan's strategic offensive against the Dutch East Indies, 1941 to 1942, to re-access embargoed oil and rubber resources. The Wehrmacht's drive towards Baku and the oil fields of the Caucasus, Case Blue and Operation Edelweiss, in the summer of 1942. The Soviet invasion of Romania in August 1944, which deprived the Axis of the important Ploiești oil fields. Campaign strategy. The British had identified the importance of Germany's fuel supplies before the war in their Western Air Plan 5C. 8. 56 The focus of British bombing during 1940 changed repeatedly in response to directives from the Air Ministry. At the start of June, oil targets were made a priority of night bombing, with attacks on other war industry to be made on dark nights, when the oil targets could not be located, but with a proviso that indiscriminate action should be avoided. On 20th of June, oil targets were made third priority below the German aircraft industry and lines of communication between Germany and the armies at the front. Following a brief period when German shipping was given priority, oil targets were made secondary priority in mid-July under a policy of concentrated attack, with 5 oil refineries listed for attention. 8. 56-57 Sir Charles Portal was skeptical of the likelihood of success, saying that only a few targets could be located by average crews under moonlit conditions. The RAF viewed Axis oil as a vital center. 9. And in February 1941, the British Air Staff expected that RAF Bomber Command would, by destruction of half of a list of 17 targets, reduce Axis oil production capacity by 80%. 10. Ploiești oilfield. Although the Butt report of August 1941 identified the poor accuracy and performance of RAF bombing, 8. 70-71 Air Chief Marshal Arthur Harris maintained at the subsequent Casablanca conference the great importance of oil targets in Axis territory. 11. The first U.S. bombing of a European target was of the Ploiești refineries on June 12, 1942, and the oil campaign continued at a lower priority until 1944. Priority fell with the need for attacks on German V-weapon targets, Operation Crossbow, in France, and then the attacks on lines of communication in preparation for the invasion of France, described as the Transportation Plan. Columbia Aquila refinery at Ploiești in Romania burning after the raid of B-24 Liberator bombers in Operation Tidal Wave. In March 1944, the plan for completion of combined bomber offensive was put forward, which found favor with the British Ministry of Economic Warfare. The plan proposed attacking 14 synthetic plants and 13 refineries of Nazi Germany. 12, 13, 14, 15. The plan estimated Axis oil production could be reduced by 50% by bombing, 33% below the amount Nazi Germany needed. 16 but also included 4 additional priorities: first oil, then fighter and ball bearing production, rubber production, and bomber output. The damage caused by the 12 and 28 of May 17 trial bombings of oil targets, as well as the confirmation of the oil facilities' importance and vulnerability from ultra-intercepts and other intelligence reports, would result in the oil targets becoming the highest priority on September 3, 1944. 18. In June 1944, in response to Air Ministry query on resources, Bomber Command staff estimated it would take 32,000 tons of bombs to destroy 10 oil targets in the Ruhr. Harris agreed to divert spare effort to oil targets. They were deemed to be of such importance that one raid was staged that consisted only of bomb-carrying fighters, to rest the bomber crews and surprise the defenders. 8, 246–247. In late summer 1944, the Allies began using reconnaissance photo information to time bombing with the resumption of production at a facility. Even with the weather limitations, this was the big breakthrough: a plant would be wounded by successive attacks on its electrical grid, its nervous system, and on its gas and water mains. Author Donald Miller. 4, 320. However, due to bad fall and winter weather, a far greater tonnage was expended on transportation plan targets than oil targets. 19. The Benzol oil plant at Linz in Austria was bombed on October 16, 1944. 20. In January 1945, the priority of oil targets was lowered. To prevent oil supplies from Romania reaching Germany, the RAF had extended its aerial mining activities to the Danube. Post-war. Despite the RAF and Harris' claims regarding the great importance of oil targets, Harris had opposed assigning the highest priority to oil targets 21, but acknowledged post-war that the campaign was a complete success with a qualifier. I still do not think that it was reasonable, at that time, to expect that the oil campaign would succeed. What the Allied strategists did was to bet on an outsider, and it happened to win the race. 4, 311, 22. Joint Chiefs of Staff Directive 1067 prohibited German post-war production of oil through July 1947, and the United States Army made post-war provisions to rehabilitate and use petroleum installations where needed, as well as to dispose of unneeded captured equipment. 23. After inspections of various plants by the European Technology Mission, Plan for Examination of Oil Industry of Axis Europe 24, and a report in March 1946, the United States Bureau of Mines 25, employed 7 Operation Paperclip synthetic fuel scientists in a Fischer-Tropsch chemical plant in Louisiana, Missouri. 26. In October 1975, Texas A&M University began the German Document Retrieval Project and completed a report on April 28, 1977. The report identified final investigations of the German plants and interrogations of German scientists by the British Intelligence Objectives Subcommittee, the U.S. Field Information Agency, Technical, and the Combined Intelligence Objectives Subcommittee. 27. Opinions on outcome. Despite its successes, by the spring of 1944 the combined bomber offensive had failed to severely damage the German economy or significantly interrupt production of a vital item. The oil campaign was the first to accomplish these goals. 28. The U.S. Strategic Bombing Survey, USPS, identified catastrophic damage. 17. Itself, German industry was not significantly affected by attacks on oil targets as coal was its primary source of energy. And in its analysis of strategic bombing as a whole, the USPS identified the consequences of the breakdown of transportation resulting from attacks against transportation targets as probably greater than any other single factor in the final collapse of the German economy. 29. 159. Several prominent Germans, however, described the oil campaign as critical to the defeat of Nazi Germany. Adolf Galland, inspector of fighters of the Luftwaffe until relieved of command in January 1945, wrote in his book The Most Important of the Combined Factors Which Brought About the Collapse of Germany, 30, and the Luftwaffe's wartime leader, Hermann Göring, described it as the utmost in deadliness. 16. 287. Albert Speer, writing in his memoir, said that it meant the end of German armaments production. 31. 412-4. It has been stated to have been effective immediately, and decisive within less than a year. 32. Luftwaffe Field Marshal Erhard Milch, referring to the consequences of the oil campaign, claimed that the British left us with deep and bleeding wounds, but the Americans stabbed us in the heart.